God, I need you. So take me to the riverside, take me under baptize. I need you. Oh God, I need you. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips, like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water on my skin, on my skin. I don't wanna abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me wanna change. I don't wanna abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me wanna change. I don't wanna abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me wanna change. I don't wanna abuse your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really makes me wanna change. Your forgiveness, it's like sweet, sweet honey on my lips, like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water, your forgiveness. Oh, it's like sweet, sweet honey on my lips. Oh, like the sound of a symphony to my ears. It's like holy water on my skin. Oh, it's like holy water on my skin. It's like holy water.
And we know that with that forgiveness that he offers and his perfect love and grace, he can make beautiful things, even from our mess. Let's sing this together.
All this pain, wonder if I'll ever find my way. I wonder if my life could really change at all. All this earth, could all that is lost ever be found? Could a garden come up from this ground at all? We make beautiful things. We make beautiful things.
Well, good morning, Ridge Church. We are so grateful to have you hanging out with us today. My name is Marla, and I'm the Director of Guest Services here at Ridge. Take a moment to get to know someone just a little bit better today. In the comments, tell everybody how you take your coffee. Do you like it black? Cream and sugar? Lots of cream and sugar? Maybe you're a hot tea or a smoothie kind of person. That's cool. Just tell us. If you are new here, we think it's a big deal that you decided to jump in and watch today, and we want to say thanks. We'd love to send you a gift, so click on the link in the comments or send a quick email to info@ridgechurch.net. This morning, we're starting a brand new, shorter format service. It will be 30 to 35 minutes each week. We hope you find it useful and encouraging, and that it gives you some extra time to watch those Upstreet and Wambaland videos with your kids. This week, we will hear from our lead pastor, Chris Brown, as we talk about what is on everybody's mind. When are we going to get back together in person? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments. Myself, the rest of the staff, we hang out there every week and we love connecting with you. See you there.
Each week, we've been highlighting individuals and businesses that have used their influence and their resources to help the people in the community around them. Things that have made us stop and say, yeah, more of this. And we know that these things are going on in your communities with your people right there, all around you. And we really want to hear about them. We want to be able to celebrate those stories with you. So post to Facebook or Instagram and use the hashtag #MoreOfThisCLT and tag Ridge Church so that we can celebrate with you. This week, we didn't know if you had heard what the Loyalist Market has been up to, and we wanted you to know. The Loyalist Market has, during this time, not only continued to provide just amazing food to go, but they've also provided free meals to school-age kids. And this has basically kind of been going on since school kids that went to school every day, found themselves being homeschool kids. And so we're talking 7+ weeks now. And during that time, they provided 300+ sandwiches a week to those kids. What? That's wild. And not only that, but Chris and the team at the Loyalist Market, they have vowed to continue to do this until money from their donations runs out. And the last we heard earlier this week, they had raised almost $50,000. Seriously? More of this. So Chris and the team over at the Loyalist Market, man, thank you guys so much for doing what you're doing. We are proud to share this community with you. And it's amazing to see organizations doing this in the community. And oftentimes we find ourselves wondering, man, how can we take part? What can we do? And so not long after this crisis began, Ridge Church started a fund called the For Fund to give people the opportunity to step in and maybe use what extra they have to help those around them who have been affected by this crisis. People who have found themselves in need because of it. But not just those people, but also a fund that would help those who are helping those who are in need. And so the For Fund was created, and in the comments below, you can see down there where you can get involved. You can jump in and you can donate towards this fund. And this is very, very important, if you find yourself in need, you can also use that same link to let us know, hey, I need help. And we completely understand why that would be the case right now. But one of the coolest things is this week, any money that comes in towards the For Fund is going to go directly to the Loyalist Market and their efforts with these meals for these school-age kids. Man, that's something we want to be a part of, and we want to help the Loyalist Market do good in the community. So thank you for those of you who have been generous in the past. It's just incredible. Needs have been met already that would not have been met otherwise. And continue to stay tuned as more and more of these stories come to light.
Well, good morning. Welcome to Ridge Church Online. Man, it's so good to be able to spend time with you guys. Thanks again for inviting us into your homes. I think one of the unexpected, beautiful things that has emerged from all this is we have reacquainted ourselves with friends that have moved to different places, and we've met a lot of new friends that are outside of the driving distance to be here, but somebody has told you about us, and you have joined, and some of you have been with us every single week, And man, that's incredible. So for new friends and old that we get to reconnect with, this is a beautiful thing. So welcome. My name's Chris. I'm the lead pastor here. And I just want to tell you up front that today is going to be a little bit different. Just like every organization, we're trying to make some really big decisions that quite honestly impact and affect and influence a whole lot of people. And not everyone agrees on the right next steps in all these different situations. If you have been watching the news, or if you're breathing, then you know that not everyone agrees. And so we don't take it lightly that we're making decisions that affect a lot of people, and they're a really big deal to us too. So today it's going to be a little different in the sense that it's probably not going to be the best sermon that you've ever heard. You might get to the end and go, I don't think that was a sermon at all, and you're probably right. I'm going to talk about some biblical principles that I think are going to be really helpful for you and really helpful for us and have been helpful for us. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about our reentry plan and what we plan to do. But I want to talk to you more about why we are making these decisions before we talk to you about the decisions we're actually making. And I'll start here. Recently, I referenced this. I'm a huge fan of the book of James, the brother of Jesus. What's not to like about the brother of Jesus that believed Jesus was the Son of God? But I think he says some incredibly simple but profound things. And one of the things he talks about is this idea that everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. That's not my natural MO. I don't know about you guys, but when I arrive in a situation, I just want to make a decision. I just want to make a statement. I don't want to ask any questions. But one of the things that I have learned, and I'm still learning even into these years in leadership, is that a lot of times when I want to make a statement, what I need to do instead is ask a question. And when I begin to ask questions, I have found that I'm a little bit quicker to listen. I'm a little bit slower to speak, and consequently, I typically get a little less angry. And so I want to talk about this idea today of some questions that we have used as an organization, the filter questions to make some of the decisions that we are making, the things we're doing and not doing. And I will say this, I would encourage you to write down these questions, because I think asking the right questions is really a secret weapon for any leader or really any human, whether you were in your first job as a part-time paid worker, or you're into a career path, whether you're a teacher or a coach, or whether you're a player on a soccer team trying to figure out how to relate to a coach or an authority figure. I think these questions are hugely valuable. And the earlier you can learn them and the quicker you can put them in place, I think the more efficient and proficient you're going to be as a leader. So with all that said, here are three primary questions and the biblical principles that kind of undergird them that we have been asking in order to make really tough decisions. So the first one's really simple. It's, what does it look like to honor our leaders? The scriptures have a lot to say about honoring leaders. In fact, Paul in the book of Romans chapter 13 talks about this idea that we're to honor the leaders that are in place. And he was talking to the Christians in Rome who were actually under a really bad regime, really poor leadership, at times even immoral leadership. And Paul talks about this idea that authority that is in place is under God's authority. God has allowed it to happen. And it doesn't mean that we have to always agree with that authority, but Paul says we're supposed to honor our leaders. And all throughout the scriptures, we see this. Now, that has to be counterbalanced with the fact that God also talks a lot about in his word the idea that leaders aren't supposed to abuse their authority. So those two things go hand in hand. But I think this is really interesting. I think that there is a way to show honor even when you disagree. Now, I'm pretty sure no one on social media knows how to do that, and no one in political parties know how to do that. But I don't think that honoring your leader necessarily means that you agree with everything they're doing all the time. That just doesn't seem realistic. But I do think that there's a way to honor our leaders even when we don't necessarily agree. And so we're asking the question, what does it look like to honor our leaders? The second question, and perhaps a more important one in light of what we're in the middle of now, is what does it look like to love our neighbors? This is such a great question, and this isn't just a great question for pandemics. This is just a great question for life. I think every follower of Jesus should be asking this all the time. I mean, for goodness sake, this was in Jesus' top 2. Group of people came to Jesus, said, what is the most important, or what is the most important law, or the thing that we're supposed to do? And he said, I'll summarize all of the law and the prophets into these 2 things. If you want to know what the most important stuff is, just love God with everything you have and love your neighbor as yourself. Most of us love ourselves a lot. So Jesus said, hey, that's pretty much it. If you can get those two things, you've done the best thing. And so, again, I think this is a great question just for life in general, not just pandemics. And one of the ways, if you've been around our community for any length of time, and for some of you, this is the reason you love Ridge Church so much, we talk about this idea and we say it this way: what does love require of me? When we're in a situation, when we're in a tough conversation, whether it's a parenting conversation, employee conversation, whatever it is, we ask the question, what does love require of me? And we really get this from what Jesus said about loving our neighbors. And I think when Jesus posed this idea, what it did is it broadened the scope. For most of us, our first inclination is to ask when we're in the middle of a situation or when we're facing something, how does this affect me? It's just normal. That's what we do. Jesus is kind of broadening the scope and forcing us not just to ask, how does this affect me, but instead, how does this affect we, all of us? I think for us right now, when we think about what does it look like to love our neighbors, we have to think about those who are vulnerable and those who are serving those who are vulnerable. I think that's part of the question that we have to ask. And the third question that we have been asking as a filter for our decision making, and we ask this all the time, not just now, is what is the wise thing to do? I'm pretty sure this should be asked all the time of all people, whether you're a boss, whether you're a college student. Hey, college students, this is your question. If you were to ask, what is the wise thing to do? Many of the things that you did and are planning to do would go away and your life would be better for it. I promise you. This is a fantastic question. I think some of the decisions that we're making right now, they're not really decisions about right and wrong. Sometimes right and wrong are easy to identify. Sometimes they're not. But I think sometimes what is even harder is to ask what is a wise thing to do. And sometimes that pushes the line back even further than what's right and wrong. There was this really interesting interaction where Paul was talking to a group of early Christians about this idea. And there was one group that were standing on something that they were saying, hey, here's what's morally right or wrong. And immediately Paul reframed the whole conversation. And he said, guys, I think there's a better way to approach this. And he said, basically, everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. What Paul was saying, in essence, is this idea that we've got to think about not just what is the right thing to do, but what is the wise thing to do. I think what he was saying is sometimes just because we can do something doesn't mean that we necessarily should do something. Everything's permissible, but not everything's beneficial. So we ask this question a lot, the idea of what is the wise thing to do. I think it's particularly important in terms of the season or the circumstances that are surrounding us, but I think it's really important in light of the audience as well. For us as a church, we decided early on that we're going to pay a lot of attention to outsiders. And we say outsiders, not good or bad people, just people who are outside of our faith, outside of our church, that are perhaps a part of our community, but not a part of the Ridge community, our broader community. So I think this is a really profound thing. When you think about outsiders, you begin to think and make different decisions. There was another time when Paul was talking to a group of Christians in a place called Colossae, and apparently they had started to get off track. They were making decisions without thinking of outsiders. And so he literally said, hey, I want you guys to be wise in the way that you act towards outsiders. Implication, you're not currently being wise in the way that you act towards outsiders. He said, I want you to make the most of every single opportunity that you have. And so for us, that's a really big deal for us. And one of the things that we've said for years, the way we've kind of framed this, and you'll see this on our walls and in the hallways, is we say we want to belong, people to belong before they believe. Like, make no mistake, if you're listening to this, we want you to believe in Jesus. We think it's the best way. We think following him is a pathway to the best life and eternal life. But here's what we don't think. We don't want that believing what we believe to be a prerequisite for being accepted in our community and having a sense of belonging. And so being wise in the way that we act towards outsiders is a really, really big deal. And for us, one of our things was not just asking the question, how do we care for believers? We want to care for believers. We want to encourage people to grow in their faith, but we didn't create our church just so believers could gather together and love one another and care for one another. That's part of it. We created our church so that we could create a place where believers felt safe and comfortable inviting people who perhaps might be on the outside a little bit to come in and experience this with us. And so that's one of the filters and the questions that we're asking. So to go back to them, we're asking, what does it look like to honor our leaders? What does it look like to love our neighbors? And what is the wise thing to do? And again, I think this is important because I want you guys to know not just what decisions we're making, but I want you to know why we're making them so that you can hopefully have confidence in the decisions. Now, let me just say this. If we have learned anything as leaders, and if you lead an organization or if you're working in one or a business, you know this. One of the things we've learned in this time is everything is fluid. Information changes and data points change. And the minute I come out of a long-term planning meeting, it seems like it gets changed and blown up out of the gate. And so it's virtually impossible to plan 4 weeks ahead, let alone 8 weeks or 12 weeks or months and months. And so we're going to change as we need to, as new information hits us. But one of the things that right now is a guiding post for us is our governor, Roy Cooper, has put in place 3 phases, 3 outline phases for how we're to look at re-entry. Now, some of you have no idea what these phases are, and you're not waking up thinking about it. And I may have just told you for the first time something you didn't know, that there are actual phases. For us, we do wake up thinking about it because it determines how we interact with you guys. And so I don't want to go into detail on this. We'll try and drop a link that lets you look in more detail of what the phases are. But I do want to mention just a couple of points that I think impact us. So in phase 1, which is what we're in currently, in phase 1, it's supposed to be 2 to 3 weeks, supposedly would end at May 22nd if, and this is a big if we hit all of our medical metrics and state requirements. And those are really big. And again, that is a really big if. Now, in this phase, we are still in a stay-at-home order. Some of you didn't know that. So welcome. You can't say you never learned anything at church. So we're still in a stay-at-home order, despite what it may feel like in the world around you. And for us, the church, one of the things that this means is we cannot meet indoors with more than 10 people, and the 10 people have to be social distanced. So for us and the size of our church, that simply does not work. The good news is our church is, I guess good news and bad news is our church is way bigger than it used to be. And so some of the things that could have been worked for us years ago don't work anymore. But I think this is really interesting. During this phase, one of the things that is permitted is we can technically meet outdoors. Again, what I would say for Ridge Church, and I'll just say this for us, there may be other pastors or church leaders that watch this or make different decisions, and there's no judgment from us on this. We just had to look at us. And for us, we don't have an outdoor space that could service our weekend crowd and maintain social distancing. It would just be chaos for us. When we ask the question, what does love require of me, or how can we love our neighbors, it just... It really becomes a really easy, or at least very clear, I should say, a decision for us to say, for us right now, we just can't meet outdoors on the lawn. And think about it this way. I can't even imagine being a nurse or a doctor that's on my way to the hospital in Matthews and driving by our church on a Sunday morning to see what looks like a block party. And trust me, that's exactly what it would look like. But we know this because we've done these, and they're awesome. And we will do them again one day. But for now, to honor our leaders, and I did talk to our mayor already about this. In fact, I'm going to interview him next week. I'm going to make sure you show back up to see that. But in order to honor our leaders and honor our community and love our neighbors well, in order to pay attention to those who are vulnerable and those who are serving them, we just are choosing not to do outdoor services right now. Now, in phase 2, this is supposed to be 4 to 6 weeks. The earliest it could start is July 3rd. The latest would be at the end of July, maybe July 24th. In this phase, technically the church can begin meeting in a limited capacity, meaning 50% of our space, while maintaining social distancing. And the short story is we're planning still not to do that because it would not be church as normal. It would not be what you're expecting. Those of you, and I get this, and I'm so grateful for this, Those of you that want to come back to church just as soon as you can, like you would be here this week if we would let you. I get that, but it would not be church as you think. And even in this second phase, it wouldn't be church as you think. I want you to imagine, for those of you that have been in our physical location, imagine our auditorium with half the capacity, everyone sitting 10 feet apart, wearing face masks. I don't want our guest services to become police at the door with temperature gauges trying to figure all of that out. I just don't think we can create an environment that's welcoming to guests and that you would invite your friends to if that's the case. And that version of church is not the one that most of you are longing to get back to. Now, let's be honest. You want to shake someone's hand. You want to hug their neck. You want to sit in close circles and talk about life. You want a crowded foyer. You want all of those things, and that's just not what we can do. Imagine Upstreet at half capacity and social distancing, or Wombaland. Children are incapable of social distancing. In fact, I think most of you adults are. I haven't met many of you. If you're the one, congratulations, you're great at it. But most of us, once we get together, we want to interact in a way that's normal. And so for those reasons and others, again, just when we're thinking about what does love require me, how are we going to do this with our neighbors, and thinking about what we're really longing to get back to, and phase 2, we won't be meeting as normal either. And just, again, think of all these different environments at half capacity. Think of our parking lot at half capacity. Okay, that would be great. But all of the other environments, it just wouldn't be the experience that you're hoping for, expecting for, the thing that you're missing. And so the last thing is phase 3. It's another 4 to 6 weeks after the beginning, mid, or end of July. And in that phase, it allows for an increased capacity. We don't know if that means 60%, 75%, and still social distancing, but not full capacity. And so that's the phase where we start to look at what it looks like to come back to some semblance of normal, but even that still won't be normal as we think of it. So what does all of that mean? Some of you are like, okay, can you just bottom line this for me? You're my people. So here's what this means. We are going to continue to do church online only for the foreseeable future. If not all of phase 1 and 2, the majority of phase 1 and 2, with very few, if any, exceptions. We are looking at other options. We're looking at what it would look like to do a drive-in service. Again, we want to do this in a way that honors our leaders and our community and is safe. And so we're looking at that. And when there's a time, maybe later down the road in later phases, that we can do outdoor services, we'll look at that. But for the first 2 phases, we will be online. And here's what I would say again. We just don't think right now we can create an experience that would be good to invite to. And so for us, what we're going to do is we're going to pull back and say the best way we can continue to create experiences where you can invite is right online. And so we're going to do everything we can to do just that. So last couple things, and I'll wrap this up. Our small groups are in a place where in these phases, they have permission to begin to meet. And so if that's something you want to do, our groups director is going to reach out and talk about some of the parameters of that. For all of our non-local friends that are wondering, wait, are you going to do online later? We plan to continue online even when we're back in person. And then I'll just say, for some of you, you're hearing all this and you're going, this is perfect. These are all the reasons that I love our church. I love their decision making. And we've said everything that you wanted to hear. For some of you, you're hearing this, and the minute you heard these time frames, you just felt anxious and you felt frustrated even. And I just want to say, we get it, and I am so sorry, and we want to be together with you as much as you want to be together with us, and we're trying to be wise in these decisions. And here's what I'd say. When we can do it in a way that honors our leaders, loves our neighbors, and exhibits wisdom, we will sling the doors open as fast and as wide as we can, and we will throw a big party. So take these questions, use them at home, use them at work, use them in whatever environment you need. They're undergirded with just rich biblical wisdom. And I'll say this too. Thanks for trusting us. Thanks for trusting me and our team. Thanks for continuing to be generous. Because you're doing that, we get to do this and so many other things and do so much good in our community. Thank you guys for all that you've done. As soon as we can do it, we'll be back together. I want to pray for us and we'll be done. God, thank you for your mercy. Thanks for loving us. I pray that you would bring a swift end to this. I pray that you would comfort those who are vulnerable, comfort those who are hurting because of job loss or financial impact. God, give strength to those who are helping those in need. And give us patience, God. And I pray that we will continue to be able to connect in the ways that you have given us platforms to connect. We ask all these things in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We know that for a lot of you, there may be some uncertainty in your life. So we hope that today we provided at least some clarity for our next steps moving forward together as a church, and also some encouragement for your week. We know that we weren't able to answer all the questions we may have today, but don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here. Remember that Ridge Church is with you because we're for you. And that's really important to us because we believe that that's also something that's true about God. No matter what you may think or believe about God, we believe that God is a God who is with you because he's for you. And we think that's probably important to carry with you this week in these times when some of us may begin to feel isolated and alone. Just remember that there's a God who loves you and he's going to be with you because he's for you. You probably noticed today that we changed some things up with our Sunday format, and we're going to continue doing that because we want to make sure that we're able to engage and connect with you in the best way possible. And we would love your input on that. So this week, we're going to be sending out a survey to hear from you about how you would love to stay best connected with us on Sundays and during the week. So be sure to check your inbox as well as our social media feeds, and we'd love to hear some feedback from you so that we can make things better for you. Well, we hope you plan to join us next Sunday. We are going to be right here, Ridge Church Online, once again. And we encourage you this week to invite someone to join you at Ridge Church next Sunday. We think it's maybe possibly the easiest time in the history of Ridge to invite a friend or coworker or neighbor to join you for church. So we hope you'll do that. And next Sunday, we're really excited about the conversation we're going to get to have. It's going to be with Mayor John Higdon, who is the mayor of Matthews. And that's going to be really great because it's always been important to us as a church to make sure that we're being a great neighbor, to make sure we're being a helpful part of our community. And we believe that now more than ever. So let's join together next week and hear how we can best do that. We hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next time.